Hey everyone, this is Tom Salemi of DeviceTalks. Welcome back to DeviceTalks Weekly. Lots to talk about today. A little later in the podcast, I will visit with Tim Schmid. He's Executive Vice President, Worldwide Chairman of MedTech at Johnson Johnson. He was our opening keynote conversation at DeviceTalks West. We'll also have on this podcast another one of our speakers from DeviceTalks West, except it's a shorter interview that Managing Editor Kayleen Brown did with Josh Makower. He, of course, is the Yock Family Professor and Professor of Bioengineering at Stanford's Mussallem Center for Biodesign. So that was a great 1-2 punch, honestly, having Tim Schmid and Josh Makower open up DeviceTalks West, and happy to bring that that combination here to the DeviceTalks Weekly podcast. We also have a great message from our sponsor, Vantedge Medical, and Vantedge is going to be the host of DeviceTalks Tuesdays. It's coming up on December 9th. Kayleen Brown will be moderating that conversation. You can check that out at DeviceTalks.com, and they'll talk about it a little bit in this podcast. So listen for that Vantedge information, and thanks to Vantedge for sponsoring this episode of DeviceTalks Weekly. Of course, we'll open up the whole thing with Newmarker's Newsmakers. Chris Newmark and I will unpack this crazy week of M&A and some other great news as well, including a strong financial report from Medtronic and much, much more. So without any further delay, thanks for joining us on DeviceTalks Weekly, and let's get this podcast started. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Newmark, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Tom. Doing well.
My God, give me an M, Chris. Give me an M.
M.
Give me an A.
A.
What's that spell? M&A, baby.
It's M&A, man.
We got some big M&A this week. Holy Moses! Wow.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll get into the Newmarkers, Newsmakers in a bit, but everything great on your end there, Chris Newmarker?
Everything's good on my end. Yeah. Here we are. We got a week till Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I know.
Do they celebrate Thanksgiving a lot in Massachusetts? Is that a big thing over there?
Yeah, we invented Thanksgiving, Chris Newmarker.
You sure?
Our idea, really.
My wife and I were like years and years ago. We're doing like a nice little drive through Eastern Virginia, and there was some nice little like brunch place at some old colonial house, and they had a plaque there saying the first Thanksgiving had been there.
Virginia, please.
Virginia.
They're always trying to steal our milestones. I was at Fort Sumter once, and they were bragging how they had a tea party.
Well, that's South Carolina, but yeah.
I know, but it's the whole thing. They had a tea party, and their tea party folks didn't dress up. They were honorable about it. So anyway, it's Thanksgiving time. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our listeners out there who are celebrating American Thanksgiving, and to our those Canadian friends. I hope you had a good time a few weeks ago. But it's a great holiday, and we will have an episode next week. We'll put something up, probably not a Newmarkers Newsmakers, but we'll have an episode for folks that they can enjoy.
Yeah, be cool.
And great. All right,
we'll be circling back, but I mean, crazy times in the world, Tom. But I still, there are many things I feel thankful about, including my gosh, man, I saw like somebody had a 6-year anniversary.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I've been here 6 years. It's hard to believe.
Been awesome, man. Definitely one of the things I'm thankful about, being able to come on here and do this with you.
It's been a crazy 6 years. We started right before COVID to plan our events, and then of course couldn't have any events. So you and I got our microphones and our headsets and said, we're going to do a podcast, and here we are. 6 years later, almost 5.5 years later, with our podcast network. I think we're closing in on 450 total episodes.
Wow.
Probably closer to 500 if Medtronic's on a different account. So if you go into Medtronic Talks, we're probably closing in on 500. So
it's awesome.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
We got some news this week, my friend. Big news.
Yes. Let's start getting rolling on it. I mean, I guess we'll start out, with number 5 on the list. This was from Sean Hooley.
Of course.
Of course. I mean, yeah, Sean's man. Sean really the engine of
the man.
He is the man, absolutely. And we have a news that Eric Todd, the VP and GM for Robotics and Enabling Technologies at Stryker, is going to be leaving the orthopedic giant after like 26 years there. And this has gotten a good amount of attention on mass device. And I think it's just because even, like, I mean, yes, there's other companies definitely stepping up to compete, but I mean, Stryker is still like kind of the really big player with orthopedic surgical robotics with like its Mako robots. And, so anytime you see some kind of leadership change over in that area of the company, I think it gets a lot of attention from people.
Yeah. And I think people are waiting for the soft tissue move. Stryker had the deal with Siemens Healthineers earlier on the neurovascular robot. They're waiting for them to pounce. So everyone's watching their program closely. Eric Todd spoke at DeviceTalks Boston. He was fantastic. No one knows what this means. It could be just Eric Todd maybe has another opportunity to lead one of these many surgical robotic startups. Maybe he just is moving on to something else. I think if there was some sort of acquisition in play that he would have stuck around till after that was done. That's usually how it happens. You acquire, and then the older guard kind of moves on. So it'll be interesting to see where Eric Todd emerges, or if he decides to do something entirely different.
And 26 years that's quite a run at the same company. I mean, good for him. That's awesome.
All right. Well, best of luck to Eric Todd, Kristen Marker. What's number 4?
Well, number 4 on the list, I'm talking about Siemens Healthineers. Now it has a partnership with Boston Scientific. They've inked a development deal related to Siemens Healthineers 4D ICE catheter. I had some good advice from MDO Managing Editor Jim Hammer not to put ICE in the in the subject line of the newsletter, because perhaps some things would not let it through because it would think it was like a political email or something. It might have
Jim's on top of these things.
Jim's like, Chris, you might want to have ICE there in the subject line. Like good. That's Jim, you should be an editor. You're really good at spotting things. But intracardiac echocardiography, that's actually what that stands for. And it's like it enables device guidance, optimal imaging quality. But the thing is, it helps to avoid the need to cross an imaging catheter from the right into the left atrium during a procedure. And so this could play in really nicely with Boston Scientific devices such as its Watchman left atrial appendage closure device, as well as its Farapulse PFA Pulsum. Yeah, I mean, those are two the really big, big medical technologies over at Boston Scientific right now. So yeah, just a really, really interesting deal.
Apparently, FaraWatch is the thing. I was just reading. Using Farapulse and then putting in a Watchman kind of in one procedure, the
two really go together. And that makes sense. I mean, because if you have, basically the PFAs to, basically treat an AFib that could raise your risk of getting, stroke, and that left aim, that LAC procedure that the Watchman's doing. I mean, that also is reducing your stroke risk. So you might as well just get them done at the same time.
Yep. And this navigation can certainly maybe make that easier and make it a more attractive option. So the PFA wars continue. Just
continues.
Really, we had an interesting conversation on LinkedIn, or it wasn't you and me, but Omar Khatib had posted something about bubbles, medtech bubbles. And
PFA bubble? Do we have a
my argument was I'll never have a medtech industry bubble. We may have pockets of bubbles. I think surgical robotics isn't a bubble. And I don't see, and by bubble, I'm defining lots of capital going into companies with I don't see necessarily a way out for some of those investors. I don't know what happens to a lot of these surgical robotics companies. PFA, I mean, I don't know if PFA is a bubble. We're certainly seeing a surge of investment. There certainly are a lot of companies pursuing it. I imagine that there's that the healthcare system could absorb different PFA products. I don't know how the clinical pathway is for that, but at least they're not reinventing the wheel. It's just sort of a different way of doing it.
It's interesting to see Abbott saying, because right now the two really big companies, Boston Scientific, Medtronic, and then you see Abbott's we're going to get in with a next gen, we're going to get on the next generation, we're going to compete, or you see somebody like Steve Michelson, we're going to treat VT with Pulsar, use pulse field for other things. We had a story on Mass Device of a company with technology for using pulse field to treat cancer. There's all kinds of applications, but But yeah, it sounds like you really need a persuasive argument to come in and compete against Boston Scientific and Medtronic at this point.
Yeah, but you're right. But if you could find different pathways, and
Different
the other, I think
pathways,
the
yeah.
other tech that's getting a lot of attention, obviously, is the brain computer interfaces,
Mm-hmm.
and that is, I think that's the most intriguing bubbles of them all, because I don't think anybody knows really what BCI is going to be capable of doing. Every day, it seems, we're seeing a BCI company. There was one today, right? At which was it? It was a
Yeah, we had Paradromics today.
Paradromics. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Paradromics.
FDA greenlighted a study of their system
To enable speech.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this reminds me in a way of the internet bubble, in that we have this great technology, this great platform technology, BCIs, and we don't know how it's going to end up. As someone mentioned on my LinkedIn post, like, we didn't know email would be such a thing when the internet came to be. Like, we knew we could sell pet food on it, but who knows what ultimately will happen.
And all those people who invested in petfood.com or whatever it was, like,
they probably did okay. I mean, they probably did okay.
Yeah.
The VCs did okay, and maybe the early, but long term, no, it was not a mutual fund booster. But my point is, there's just some real fascinating mini bubbles within medtech, and we're spinning off the BCI, Boston Scientific, Siemens Healthineers, the pulse field ablation, but just an interesting time to be in medtech, and there's so many fascinating technologies.
And Paul, just to talk about pulse field ablation just a little bit more. I mean, number 3 on our list here is, I covered Medtronic second quarter earnings this week, and it was pulse field ablation, the Acera technology, that really fueled this street beating second quarter, enabled Medtronic to up their revenue guidance for the year. Investors, so far, at this point this week, we're talking on Thursday. Medtronic stock for the week, still over. It was up 5% on the first day, and it's still over, 3% for the week at this point. So good earnings report from them. And, they said that their, PFA franchise in the United States has more than quadrupled year over year.
That's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. So
that's not a bubble. That's a growth sector for sure.
Sector, and
one Medtronic's benefiting from.
And they've got. They have the Sphere 9 out from Acera, and now they're they got their Acera Sphere 360, which is an investigational single shot mapping and ablation catheter, just uses PFA. They announced in their recall they've submitted an investigational device exemption with the FDA for that, so they can get a study going to a pivotal trial on Acera going during this quarter. So they're definitely driving forward with that. So and there's some other things in the pipeline. They're just doing really well for them right now. So that's good news.
They talked about renal innovation as a growth area for them. I know there was discussion about the hope for Hugo getting approval over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I think that's the big question. They're definitely saying they're looking to get entrance in the U.S. market with Hugo by the end of their fiscal year, which ends in April, and that's going to be a big thing to watch. How much can they compete against Intuitive in the U.S. in that space? Because Intuitive just has had such a head start over so many years. And as well as a next gen system that came out, just last year. So, but yeah, they're saying they think Hugo can be a driver for their medical surgical business.
Well, as we'll hear in the conversation I had with Tim Schmid at DeviceTalks West, and it's our keynote conversation in this episode today, he talked about J&J wanting to be a leader in surgical robotics as well, and he obviously, everyone acknowledges Intuitive's position in play, but he leaned on the instruments. I think his argument is like, look, we have great instruments people like to use. Now we'll provide a surgical robotic system that uses those instruments, and that'll speed adoption. So this might be something similar that Medtronic's betting on. That
I think so.
They have that place. They have those beachheads in the ORs, and if they get a system in there, it's like, if I got an iPhone, I'm buying a MacBook Pro. Like I'm just staying in the ecosystem, and Intuitive's building their own ecosystem. So it's going to be a battle of the digital ecosystems going forward once everyone has their robots.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see all this competition and where it leads next. And
Yep.
yeah, I think you're right. Medtronic, J&J, they've just got it with all their surgical tools businesses. Like they just have to get in with robots to compete against this. So
Yeah, and to the earlier point about surgical robotics, I just don't know how all these smaller robots fit into these big ecosystems. You know, is J&J going to buy a smaller robot? Is Medtronic? Is Intuitive? Is that the plan? Or do they have to build their own ecosystems to exist with it? And no hospital is going to host multiple ecosystems. It just doesn't seem practical. I hate it when I have to use a PC if we're at our conferences and they have their Dell laptops, and I'm like, how do I move the cursor? I don't know what to do. I can't imagine doing that in surgery. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like the smaller companies that thrive in this environment are the ones that obviously are going to be making like plays kind of around this, like, oh, do we get an ambulatory surgery center?
Yeah. Well, obviously, Moon Surgical, and then I think the neurovascular space is fascinating because that's just not a space where the big companies are playing, and certainly there's a huge need for that. So
yeah, totally.
Many companies in surgical robotics will succeed. I'm not saying they won't, but I don't really know how all of these companies find a home in the future, but we'll see.
There's a lot of companies.
I've been wrong about lots of stuff.
Exactly. Me too, man. we're just two people who cover the news, you know. We'll see.
What's number two?
We know enough to be dangerous.
Exactly.
Number 2 on the list.
This is the M&A part. Woo-hoo!
Yeah, now here we are, the M&A, man. I mean, so fresh off the presses, we got Solventum, you know, formerly 3M Healthcare. They've done their first tuck-in acquisition as a standalone company. $900 million.
Amazing. Yeah, no, it's funny. I was thinking, like, a little bit of backstage. Chris will send me some news articles for the news. He'll pick his 5 newsmakers, and I'll always be like, who cares about restructuring debt, or who cares about like financial? But in this case, Solventum cleaned up its debt, and now it can make an all cash deal for a very cool company for close to $1 billion and begin to move forward and to begin to build the company it wants to be. So great news. So what is this? How does Acera fit into what they do?
Yeah, this company is Acera Surgical, and they're, founded in 2013, and they develop innovative synthetic treatment options for soft tissue repair. They've got a line of products called Restrada it's available in the U.S. Treats hard to heal complex wounds, like in acute care settings. But the analysts are saying that this goes well. It complements the existing portfolio that Solventum has in synthetic grafts. And it's going to be a nice high growth contributor to the portfolio. So the analysts are positive about the deal. So it's fantastic. Off they go. Solventum is shopping.
No, very, very great to see. It's we had Rachel Ellingson, of course, at DeviceTalks Minnesota. This is great to see Solventum and like High Ridge and others sort of getting their footing and moving forward. All these spinouts that had to work out the debt that comes with a spinout, and now they're building their own stories. So great news for Solventum. And
it's exciting news in the Twin Cities where I'm based too. I mean, Solventum's going to be moving into a new headquarters south of the cities in Egan, and so they're growing and acquiring, and it's good to see a company like that around here.
I'm almost certain, 99.9% sure that we'll have a major speaker from Solventum at DeviceTalks Minnesota, but we'll announce that soon.
That's exciting. Fantastic.
All right, and now the big one. I mean, this is nuts that this isn't number one. That the Solventum acquisition isn't number one for
right. Yeah, this should have been. I mean, close to $1 billion. That's because Abbott decided they're going to spend $21 billion.
$21 billion. I was late to the recording because I was posting on LinkedIn, and I had the top 10 MedTech deals overall. So Medtronic, Covidien, $43 billion. Abbott, St. Jude, $25 billion. BDCR Bard, $24 billion. Danaher, Cytivia, $21.4 billion, and now Abbott. So this is the top 5 all-time MedTech M&A deal.
How much did Abbott spend for St. Jude Medical years ago?
That was $25 billion.
Okay, all right,
so, in the ballpark.
Yeah, in the ballpark. So and CEO Robert Ford, I was listening to as a call with analyst this morning, even referenced the St. Jude Medical deal, which he was involved in, saying like, we're going back and using like lessons. I think he said something like he had a 5-point five major point plan, when he was integrating St. Jude, and like he says, now we're gonna get our 5-point plan going on Exact Science. Like try to say they got a good track record on integrations, and I mean, he very positive about Exact Sciences on that call. I mean, there's a lot of excitement there, and I mean, just really they see this like really growing their diagnostic business, and I mean, Exact Sciences, for people who don't know, I mean, they're based in Madison, Wisconsin, and they make their flagship project is Cologuard, which a lot of people around our age have used. So
that's the thing. That's interesting. I think this is a brilliant deal because Cologuard was never made an option to me. I know, like in California, I've got some friends there, and I think Kaiser Permanente is big on pushing Cologuard as a sort of a first round. But it was never really brought to my attention. I went traditional colonoscopy, not to get too detailed. But it wasn't a, hey, you could do this or you could do that. It was just I was going to ask about it, but I was like, you know what? I waited too long anyway. I'd rather get a more certain examination.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're a bit younger than me. Has Cologuard been a conversation that you've had with your primary care?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, it's been the first line for me, Tom. But yeah, I mean, I thought, definitely seems better than the alternative, which I mean, I'm on the route to doing eventually.
It's not that bad. We did our Olympus Talks, a whole Olympus Talks episode about it's really not that bad.
You recorded it during the procedure.
I should have. I should have.
Tom, you sound like you're uncomfortable. What's going on?
I was out like a light. Yeah, no, I'm not a very brave man. So
my understanding is in Europe, it's more common to do it without anesthesia. I mean,
good for them, European.
You're like,
good
no.
That's fine. But no, I think it's a brilliant move. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think Abbott's going to generate a lot of growth from it, and they have and Cologuard, like you said, is the lead test, but they have a whole line of oncology tests in addition to that. A whole
line of oncology tests. They have a lot of technologies. They were pointing out that I mean, they're projected to generate over $3 billion in revenue this year. Their organic sales growth is in the high teens. I mean, it's been a successful company, a really important part of Madison, Wisconsin's economy, and they're Abbott's really seeing this. I mean, like Ford in his call, this morning was saying like this is going to further strengthen Abbott's leadership position in diagnostics. I mean, really allowing them to make a big play in the oncology space. So yeah, the analysts are positive about the deal. So yeah, it's exciting.
What's really, jokes aside about tests and age and things like that, but what's really cool about covering this industry for a long time is I remember Exact Sciences starting and getting its early rounds and getting public and having Kevin Conroy at the MedTech, now that's the MVP conference, but the MedTech conference in Minnesota that you might have been at there. It was before we worked together. But
I was at that. Man. I was covering it. Yeah.
And they had gone public, and that was the big deal. And now you see this company is like a seismic game changer for MedTech.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at one point just a small little company. And
that's right.
So it just really kind of embodies the entrepreneurial dream that everyone has, that someday they want to be. I mean, certainly people don't mind being compensated, but I think everyone thinks about, someday I want my device to be this important and to change this many lives. And it's very cool to see when it happens. So,
yeah. And I mean, I'm really like in MedTech, I mean, it can take a long time to get there. And,
absolutely.
I mean, it says something to the fact that, I mean, we have a lot of like really smart, driven people in this industry. I mean, who they could be like going and trying to build AI bots or do any other kind of ridiculous thing, and they're spending years and years like growing these devices, growing these companies, like moving them along pathways. And so I mean, just good for the Exact Sciences team, man, that they took. I mean, gosh, that conference you're talking about, I mean, that must have been like 10, 12 years.
10 years ago. Maybe 8 to 10 years ago. It was definitely 8 to 10 years ago.
So they got it somewhere. So.
They got it somewhere, but you're right in terms of we're talking about the quote unquote bubble in surgical robotics. Intuitive was founded in the mid '90s, like
right.
it's in surgical robotics. Mako was in the early 2000s, I think, and got acquired by Stryker in 2013. Like this is not a
I
fast moving industry in that regard.
no, I mean, yeah, Intuitive in the '90s, and I remember some of the interviews you've done with higher ups at our Device Talks shows, like higher ups at Intuitive. I mean, like the same kind of thing back in the '90s. People, they were facing like a lot of like skepticism, and it was a hard road at first. But like why surgeons are used to doing surgery this way? Why are you going to bring in some robot that's going to like get in the way or whatever?
Yeah, and that's what's I think so exciting about BCIs. Like, we don't know what's going to happen now, but like 20 years from now, Chris, like who knows? Like who knows what brain computer interfaces are going to do to help people walk, to help people talk, to just give people their lives back. It's really really an astounding piece of technology. I can't wait to see.
No, absolutely. I mean, and how it's gonna change communications. I mean, though I'd say the less invasive, the better. I mean, but if you're going to get that in the general population, but if we're doing Device Talk, we're going to be doing Device Talks Weekly 20 years from now with a live stream into people's heads.
Exactly.
It's like Chris is in my head talking.
Right. We're going to be earworms. We're going to be brainworms.
like the Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
Wow, that was like a total nerd.
More like I've had a Crash Test Dummy song on my head this whole week. I just got rid of it, I realized, and I brought it up. Now it's going to find its way back.
Don't repeat it. I don't need that.
I will not hum it so people are stuck with it. I'd rather than listen to the rest of this podcast. So Chris Newmarker, great job with the Newsmakers, as always.
Great as always, buddy. Talk to you. See you after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, after Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to the Newmarker clan. All right, thanks for those newsmakers, Chris Newmarker. Now I'm happy to introduce our sponsor for this episode, Vantedge Medical. Our managing editor, Kayleen Brown, will interview Greg Santorno. He's Chief Commercial Officer at Vantedge. Let's listen.
Greg Santorno, Chief Commercial Officer at Vantedge Medical. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Kayleen. It's so good to be here and great to see you again.
It's really great to see you again. I got to see you just a couple of weeks ago at DeviceTalks West. It's like seeing my family again. And you know what, Greg? I'm still thinking about our session together at DeviceTalks Boston, the panel session. And it's been just running through my head since then. So I'm beyond words pleased to have the chance to chat with you again and continue that conversation.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
And thinking about things that I'm excited about and learning more about. I believe you have a Device Talks Tuesdays coming up on December 9th.
We do. Yeah. And we're really excited about that. So it's a webinar where we're going to talk about how we at Vantedge Medical are developing the next generation of talent. And the foundation of the webinar is talking about the great tool room we have at Hobson and Motzer, which has been there for over 100 years. That tool room has employed an apprenticeship program, and that apprenticeship program is enabling us to develop and create the next generation of tool makers and tool designers and technicians. Further, we're expanding the tool room both from a people and technology perspective. We're super excited to give you that behind the scenes look, talk about the apprenticeship program, and really look forward to it, Kayleen. We appreciate the opportunity.
I will hear a little more from Vantedge Medical a little later in the podcast. If you want to find out more right away, go to its website, vantagemedical.com. And Vantedge is spelled VANTEDGE. VantEdgeMedical.com. Now we'll hear Kayleen Brown's interview with Josh Makower at our DeviceTalks West FOMO studio.
Makower, co-founder and director of the Stanford Mussallem Center for Biodesign. Welcome to the FOMO series.
Thank you so much.
I had the pleasure of sitting down with you at a keynote at DeviceTalks West, and there we talked about some threats to the ecosystem. We talked about FDA, we talked about reimbursement, but I really wanted to focus on investment and the medtech ecosystem, the innovation ecosystem. So first, what drew you into medtech and venture capital? I know you started as you studied to be a physician.
Right.
Like, where did that pivot go to venture capital?
I think that the realization that venture capital drives innovation in this country is what brought me there. And it is, all these players are all intimately connected to one another. So to be able to understand, I think you're a better innovator if you understand what investors want. So that's probably what drew me in that direction, was that if I can get closer to the source of the power source, that I could actually understand it and utilize that information to help my own ventures, but also other people's.
I think I've heard it say that where the money flows, the attention goes.
That is true.
And so what a better way to get attention and awareness, but
Exactly.
So let's talk about the biggest or most noteworthy challenges to the medtech innovation ecosystem today.
Yeah. Well, the number one challenge is reimbursement. That is the issue that we really need to solve. I would say that innovations have heard the message that they need to be cost effective, that they need to be, thoughtful and really improve outcomes. They aren't just about technology for technology's sake. They're supposed to improve care and hopefully improve efficiencies, lower costs ultimately. So I think innovators have done that, but we are facing a lot of still headwinds with private insurers and also in the public system that need to be addressed. And we've got to solve it for every patient out there and to keep our innovation ecosystem healthy.
So we're talking about what we need to do based off those challenges. And have there been any technical achievements or policy achievements or anything that's getting us there today?
On the reimbursement side, you have to sort of look at the different verticals. I would say on the coding side, that's really the domain of AMA. We have made some, I think there have been some steps forward, but we have some work to do. I think the last remaining thing that we really need to work on is this thing called widespread use, which is a requirement for Cat 1 codes that we need to make transparent, predictable, and fair. I think if we do that, that will sort of solve some of the coding issues. The next part is coverage, and that's where we really still have many, many issues. The proliferation of prior authorization is a big threat for innovation. The fact that AI and sort of AI agents are being deployed to manage a lot of that is very scary, because it used to at least involve humans, I think less and less so. And that's making it exceptionally difficult for patients and physicians to advance new technologies and really get some degree of coverage. It's been a real roadblock, and it's costing everyone money, including the insurance companies. It's costing them money too. They think they're deploying it to save money, but it's not. It is costing everyone more money. So we have to fix it.
What does fixing it look like?
Fixing it looks like having a rational and transparent, predictable process. One that I would like to see almost leans into new technologies, allows for the medical directors to have direct contact with the innovators, direct contact with the physicians that are trying to advance the technology, and makes it a less arduous process. I mean, this process of prior authorization, rejection, appeal, and that whole thing, just wasting a lot of time. And many of these technologies deserve to be here. They are coming, and it's really just a test of who can last the longest. And that's really not benefiting our economy. And so I think we can do a better job of evaluating and creating the right frameworks for approval of these things based on clinical evidence, and advance the ball forward and get coverage for patients that need help, don't have a good solution. And when the new solution has the potential and has a reasonable amount of clinical evidence, that should be covered.
Do you see the industry responding in actionable ways that might get us closer to where we need to go? Do you see anything happening right now that might be urging?
On the public side, there are several bills in Congress right now that look like they will move forward some form of accelerated coverage for breakthrough devices, which is great. It won't be as extensive as the original MCIT idea, the Medical Coverage for Innovative Technology proposal that was an executive order. That was put aside, but I think that the bills that have emerged are doable, inexpensive, and still will have a good impact. I think would love to see more, but that's a good first step. So that's some movement. On the private side, I'm not seeing any movement right now. We have a lot of work to do.
What about venture capital specifically? How do you see it changing in the near future? And is that change for the better?
Yeah. Well, right now, venture capital has moved bigger funds later stage. A lot of the money is there. And that's benefiting groups or companies that have been able to advance their technology into late pivotal or early clinic commercialization or even mid-commercialization. There's money out there for those firms. The early stage and sort of early mid stage is really suffering right now, and that's where we need more investment. And that's where it would be nice to see some of the leading companies lean in to help support. This has happened in the past, and they did. In a previous significantly challenged period for medical devices around the time of 2008, 2010, big companies like J&J did lean in and invested much more heavily in the early stage ecosystem, and that was tremendously helpful. So I think this is a call to action for companies that care about, that basically are the recipients of this innovation, that buy this innovation, that use it for their growth. It's an opportunity for them to step forward. But I think we also need to fix some of the fundamentals of our ecosystem around reimbursement to shorten the timelines to liquidity. And that will help a lot too. So these two factors, I think, can be helpful right now.
And if both of those happen,
yeah,
and I'm going to take away when.
Right.
Let's be optimistic. When
Yeah.
both of these happen,
Yeah.
how is that going to impact our ecosystem in the long-term future?
Well, I think we're going to, if those two things are addressed, I think we're going to see an increase in early stage investors, which means that novel new ideas are going to get more money and more opportunity to evaluate whether they work or not. And it's going to just keep the flywheel going. And as I mentioned when we just spoke, the Nobel Prize was just awarded to economists that identified innovation as one of the primary things that keeps economies healthy. So innovation in all these sectors is important, and medical technology and health, it couldn't be more important to everybody. So I'm hoping that we see alignment between that insight that the Nobel Committee decided on and the opportunity for everyone to participate in trying to make this better.
Well, you and me both. Josh Makower,
Yeah.
thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us on the future of MedTech opportunity.
Thanks so much. Yeah, real pleasure, Kayleen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of FOMO. Thanks again to Josh Makower for helping us kick off DeviceTalks West. Now we'll hear once again from our sponsor, Vantedge Medical. Kayleen Brown is talking with Chief Commercial Officer Greg Santorno.
There's a very specific reason that I asked for your time today. I'm really trying to better understand metals. So with that in mind, why are metals one of the most critical materials used in medtech today?
Kayleen, they're the backbone of every mission-critical medtech or med device system out there. And when you think about it, just a few examples, and I know that we play in the robotic-assisted surgery space in a very big way. The actual robot itself, or the surgeon console, or the accessories cart, metals are required in order to create the structural rigidity and the accuracy and the performance and survive the rigors of being in an OR and providing procedures every single day. So for us, metals provide the ultimate in precision, control, and safety. They're absolutely required in our space.
I also really want to understand, how does that focus and Vantedge's deep expertise translate into an advantage for your customers?
Well, we believe that our commitment to our foundation, which is metals manufacturing, it enables our focus and investment that's required in order for us to be the very best at what we do. And it's this singular focus on metals that enables us to make clear investments in people, process, and technologies. It enables us to accelerate innovation with fewer unknowns and predictable performance. And this is from prototyping all the way through to production. We believe at Vantedge Medical, our customers deserve a partner that isn't distracted by trying to do everything. They deserve partners that are focused, and that focus reduces risk. And that risk must be reduced in a world where there is absolutely no room for error.
I got chills on that one, Greg. I got to say, I got chills. So let's shift and talk about OEMs. I often hear that OEMs are looking for more than a supplier. They want a partner who's invested in their success. Do you have any examples of how a trusted relationship is built? And can you share what a partnership really looks like at Vantedge?
For us, it starts with an aligned vision, goals, and objectives. If our vision is aligned, that's the foundation. And for us, when we think about the 1,500 plus associates around the business, and we recognize that every single one of them recognize that we're making a difference in the lives of patients and families and caregivers, our customers demand that alignment. That's the foundation. Second, we believe that it's incredibly important for us to have this ownership value, which is we understand our role. We know that we play a critical role on this team. And if we don't do that well, we're not successful together. Third, collaboration. Collaboration enables effective teamwork. It enables breakthrough of performance and achievement of these objectives that always feel like a stretch. Finally, we also believe that early engagement, where possible, is key. And the example that I have here, Kayleen, is, and you mentioned it earlier, when we got together in DeviceTalks Boston, and you were kind enough to moderate the panel with Barry Templin, CTO of Acera Robotics, we talked about our first step process and how we engage with customers early in the design phase to bring manufacturability into the equation early. In that particular case study and example, what we talked about was it was critical we only were providing 4 components for their launch, but for those 4 components, it was critical that we accelerate that final design phase and we produce products. We did that in a matter of days and weeks in an environment that would typically take months. It was a great success, and it truly is the foundation of what a partnership looks like and the way that we and our customer interacted together. That's what partnership means to Vantedge Medical.
Fantastic, Greg. And with your permission, I'd like to invite our audience to reach out to you directly on LinkedIn so they can get access to the audio or the white paper that came out of this session at DeviceTalks Boston with Procept Biorobotics. Is that okay if they reach out to you?
Oh, 100%. And you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Greg. My last name is spelled Santorno. Would love to connect with you and pass along that white paper and the audio. Thanks, Kayleen.
That was really generous of you. And for our audience, I really do hope that you take Greg up on his offer. It was a fantastic session and absolutely worth revisiting.
All right, once again, we'll hear a little more from Vantedge a little later in the podcast. Go to VantageMedical.com now for more information. Now, my conversation with Tim Schmid of Johnson Johnson MedTech. I was so pleased to have him as the opening keynote at DeviceTalks West. Let's listen.
Tim, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Tom.
Please. Why don't you sit right there in the center, maybe? But we like to start all of our conversations really focusing on the person and understanding how they found their way into MedTech. What was the entry point for you in the pathway and the passion that led you here?
Well, Tom, firstly, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I don't need any encouragement to get out west. We are very proud to be a big part of the MedTech ecosystem here in the Bay Area, and really appreciate the opportunity. I came to healthcare probably inspired by my mom. My mother was a palliative care nurse. I grew up in South Africa, and she was so passionate actually about nursing that she studied nursing, became a palliative care nurse, had kids, moved countries. We moved to Canada, did her degree again, and then nursed until her mid-60s.
Wow.
So I think growing around that certainly helped me better appreciate the importance of empathy and the incredible impact that we can make within the healthcare industry. I've only worked for J&J, which I know is not very common these days, and I've only worked in this industry, in MedTech. I joined 32 years ago. And many people ask me, well, why have you stayed? I mean, the first answer is really simple, and it's the purpose. What we do here, we don't just make widgets. We make things that actually do change and save lives. And I think that is an incredible calling, and certainly something that keeps me incredibly motivated every day. The second one is the opportunity. Of course, we all want to grow and learn, and not for a second did I ever think I'd be doing what I'm doing today, but I did it because other people probably saw more in me than I did in myself and encouraged me to do different things. And in J&J, as we think about sort of leadership development, we think about it through three lenses, both cross-functional, can you learn across different functions, cross-company, the more experiences you have across different companies, and then cross-geography. And I've had the real pleasure and honor to have done many different functional roles, starting in sales, moving into marketing, front-end marketing, regional marketing, global marketing, which is involved in innovation, business development, M&A, and then from a business perspective, given the breadth of J&J, I've had the opportunity to work in, starting actually in diagnostics. I started with a company that was based out of the Bay Area here, a company called LifeScan. This is when episodic glucose monitoring in diabetes was a big thing. Moved to surgery, touched cardiovascular, and then geographic. While not everyone maybe likes to live out of a suitcase, but I've loved it. And I've had the opportunity I started in Canada. I spent 12 years across Europe. About 15 years here in the US, both in the Bay Area, in Boston, as well as in New Jersey, and then the last 5 years before taking this role, actually leading our medtech businesses out in Asia. One thing I will say before we get in, I do think that we are at such an exciting time in medtech. And when you think about the technologies that are available to us to now apply to medicine and to medical technology, I do think that this is really an inflection point, and we are moving from medical device to med tech, right? Operating rooms that I grew up in around the world used to be about sutures and scalpels and obviously the steady hands of surgeons, and now they're all about robotics, digital platforms, and so I think the industry is changing so rapidly, and there's just an incredible opportunity for us to make a difference.
You talked about J&J's approach to mentoring. I'm just curious, if you were to give advice to someone about building a career in a company, what would you take away from your experience? What's one thing that you did or did repeatedly that kind of put you in a position for that next thing? Is it always just raising your hand? Is it taking on challenges? Do you have a piece of advice for folks who are looking to
Tom,
move
it's very
forward?
simple. It's simply saying yes.
Yeah.
Right? I think often we're given opportunities in our lives, and for some reason we think that we're not ready, we can't do it, we don't want to move. I simply said yes, and I understand there's a lot of discomfort and anxiety that comes along with always saying yes, right? I do believe that if you take on a new job and you don't have those sweaty palms or the odd sleepless night, you probably didn't take the right job and you're not learning. And so for me, it was simply saying yes.
That's great. We have similar conversations right before conferences. We're all nervous like heck, and we've realized it's a good thing. What's one travel hack? I'm curious. You travel the world. Like, what do you do to kind of settle in? Do you take off your shoes and put your feet on the floor of the carpet to ground yourselves, or take an electrolyte? Anything that makes sure you're living out of a suitcase existence?
Oh, I always wonder when people tell me that they figured it all out and they can move on to different time zones. I've never been able to. I just go with the flow. I do as best I can. I sleep when I can, and so no, I don't have any great advice in that department.
Acceptance. Just give yourself up to the experience. So you talked about your global perspective, and your executive team has that global perspective as well. What does that bring to running a global medtech company, and how does that help in today's environment? The global economy is everyone's taking a harder look at it. How does your global perspective help guide J&J?
Well, Tom, I think it depends on what your aspirations are, either as a leader or as a company. But if your aspirations are to be global, I think those experiences and those perspectives are really important, right? We have a CEO at J&J who's the first time an American isn't the CEO. He's from Spain. I grew up in Africa. And so, for us, it's not about just knowing the science. It really is about knowing the people, right? And having deep insights into the different cultures around the world, and more importantly for us, different health systems, which are very different. Some cash pay, some more universal in nature. And we think that is just fundamental to building and growing a global business. We also think that there's a lot of competitive advantage that comes along with being global. Right, 50% of our sales today, by the way, in J&J MedTech is from outside of the U.S. So it allows us to, that diversification allows us to manage a lot of volatility, economic or geopolitical, probably more so than others. We're able to garner insights. We're listening to clinicians in real-world clinical environments, more so than most. And so we're able to secure different insights from around the world that really help inform our innovation. I think it allows us to attract the best talent. I think talent globally wants to join a company that is global in nature, and we are. We have 75,000 people and facilities around the world, and I think finally the competitive advantage is all about access, right? In this day and age, especially given how the political environments are changing, policies are changing, having a seat at the table is really important, whether that be at the White House or in any government setting around the world. The fact that we are the largest and most comprehensive healthcare company gives us an opportunity to participate, and we take that responsibility very seriously.
How does all that's going on in the world affect your relationship? We have a lot of suppliers in the room, folks who enjoy servicing the larger medtech companies. Are the changes that are being looked at or being implemented, are they changing your relationship with suppliers? Are you looking for more suppliers based in each of these countries? Is it causing any sort of recalculation on your part?
You mean more geopolitically?
Yes.
So, of course, it's having an impact, but at the end of the day, our expectation and the types of relationships we have with suppliers are all grounded on their ability to provide products that are, reliably and with a great sense or the highest level of quality. Tom, that's where it all starts, and certainly that is never going to change regardless of what happens geopolitically. Now, of course, if you're asking, have we had to pivot given some of the geopolitical dynamics at play? Absolutely. At the same time, not significantly, given how invested we are and will continue to be here in the United States. What does matter, and I think we learned this through COVID, and we're learning it even more now, is having a global resilient supply chain where you have that global scale, but you've also got that agility at a local level really matters. And so things like dual sourcing, much more important today than ever before, local delivery, really important. But at the end of the day, it starts with quality. We believe a lot in our supplier relationships and work a lot with them to ensure that they're upholding our standards and also helping us to innovate. It's a wonderful source of innovation, and we count on that significantly.
I will take one final break from our conversation to hear from our sponsor, Vantedge Medical. Once again, Kayleen Brown is talking with Greg Santorno of Vantedge.
I want to start talking about supply chain. With ongoing global supply chain disruptions and increased pressure on OEMs to manage risk, how can manufacturers adapt to ensure greater reliability and control?
We're seeing it, Kayleen. Global supply chains are increasingly fragile today. We're seeing OEMs and their level of concern and how they're prioritizing resilience over cost alone. We see active initiatives across the industry to reshore, to bring product manufacturing back to the United States, back to domestic manufacturing. For us, we're 100% US-based. All 7 of our grade sites are here right in the US. And we believe that by being here, we can reduce risk, we can provide cost stability, and in certain cases, even lower cost given tariff implications. We have scale, so we can bring that scalability to follow that product life cycle all the way through commercialization and provide speed. Our customers are also taking advantage of proximity now, whereas before it was so difficult. We're just a drive away in certain cases or a short flight away, and we can collaborate face to face. At the end of the day, our mindset around being an extension of our customers' business and operation and team, for them, that's a force multiplier. And that inherently reduces risk in supply chain.
Excellent. Well, Greg Santorno, Chief Commercial Officer for Vantedge Medical, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
You are welcome. It's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Kayleen.
And our time together won't end because I'll be joining the Vantedge Medical team on December 9th for Device Talks Tuesdays to talk about how Vantedge Medical can help develop the next generation of technical talent. For our audience, if you want to learn more about Vantedge Medical, metals expert, please visit their website at www.vantedgemedical.com. That's VANTEDGE medical.com.
Now the conclusion of my conversation with Tim Schmid of Johnson Johnson MedTech.
Let's talk about the news of the week. You took the helm of the medtech business in 2024. One of the perks is participating in quarterly calls, one of which you had yesterday. We'll talk about the bigger news in a moment. How was your quarter? Do you have a good quarter? Any insights you want to share with our audience?
Let me just say this is a much less stressful environment.
I'm glad you can make you feel more comfortable.
We are very proud of the performance, and we reported, as you know, growth of 5.6%, about 8.4 billion in the quarter. And I must say, listen, growing off of a base of what will be annual sales north of 33 billion is not easy.
No.
And I couldn't be more proud of the 75,000 people around the world who are driving our business. What really drove that, Tom, is our shift in pushing our portfolio into higher growth markets. Cardiovascular growing strong double digit, a lot of that off of building on core businesses we have, like electrophysiology, adding new businesses in places like heart recovery and circulatory restoration. In fact, Shockwave is one of the businesses we recently acquired just around the corner here, who are doing incredible work for patients. Our surgery business, one of our largest businesses, also being driven by tremendous performances in businesses like wound closure. J&J, most people think that we were started as a consumer products company. We actually started in medical device as a wound closure company. J&J was founded as a company, one of the first companies to mass produce surgical gauze and ligatures used in sutures. That today is still a business, multi-billion-dollar, growing 7%. Remarkable. I'll go to vision. Vision is amazing. We serve the needs of roughly 40 million patients worldwide with intraocular lenses and contact lenses, growing 6%. And then we had a nice resurgence of our orthopedics business, to round out a great quarter. And of course, we shared some significant news about our decision to separate from our orthopedics business.
Yeah, I shared that. I initially had a question: how are you, in this age of diversification, how are you keeping everything together? And then the news came out this week. Talk a bit about the DePuy-Synthes decision. I got the sense from reading articles that this, obviously, nothing happens suddenly, but this was something that was identified earlier on, and you've been moving toward. How did this decision come to be?
Yeah, these are never made overnight, Tom. They're all part of a much bigger plan, right? And believe me, we don't take a decision of that magnitude lightly, especially given the amount of patients who count on us, physicians who count on us in the orthopedic space, and the amount of very dedicated 15,000 employees that we have working in that business. But at the end of the day, it comes down to portfolio management, right? And our responsibility is to ensure that we're continuously optimizing our portfolio to create value for our stakeholders. And we've been on a journey over the last couple of years to shift our portfolio from lower growth markets into higher growth markets. Mm-hmm. We started with some significant investments in companies like Abiomed out of the Boston area, worldwide leaders in heart recovery. We made a $13 billion acquisition 2 years ago of a company just down the road here in the Bay Area called Shockwave, which have this incredible technology called intravascular lithotripsy to help unclog clogged arteries. And this next step in our decision to separate our orthopedics business is the next big move in that shift of our portfolio into high growth markets. And so certainly there's a tremendous benefit to J&J. Once the transaction is done, we immediately will have accretive top line growth as well as better margins. And then just as importantly, when you have such a broad portfolio, we frankly have had to deprioritize our ortho business given its lower growth and margin profile. Mm-hmm. And so as a separate company, it will be the largest full play orthopedics company on the planet. In fact, by itself, at 9.2 billion in sales, it'll be the 14th largest independent medtech company. Wow. Right, which will allow it to actually compete more head to head with the majority of competitors in that space who tend to be dedicated to the orthopedic space. And so a difficult choice for all stakeholders, but one that we fundamentally believe will set up J&J as well as DePuy-Synthes, which is the business that it's going to be called, for greater success.
Do you have a sense of how what that new company will look like? Will it be publicly traded? Will it be private equity backed? Will it be a standalone business? Do you have a pathway yet?
Tom, we were quite deliberate in not at least articulating that path because we will learn. Mm-hmm. We'll learn over the next couple of months as to what could occur. It could be in the form of a sale, given its size. We will see, and if not, a spin. But it'll be one or the other of those two paths.
In the announcement, Joaquin Duato, the chair and CEO, said there'd be a sharper focus on their 6 critical areas: oncology, immunology, neuroscience, cardiovascular, surgery, and vision. We've touched upon a few. We'll revisit them. But what does that focus look like? What does it mean? How will it be perceived by those of us outside of J&J?
Yeah, and what our CEO articulated was our 6 focus areas across both our innovative medicine or our pharmaceutical business as well as MedTech.
Okay.
What that means for MedTech is that we will move from a 4-company focus to a 3. It is all about cardiovascular, surgery, and vision. And so what you could expect externally outside of J&J is a much greater focus on innovating in those 3 areas. In cardiovascular, I mentioned the businesses we've now built across electrophysiology, heart failure, and intravascular lithotripsy. We now have an opportunity to continue to invest both through internal R&D and M&A in that area. In surgery, it is all about executing on surgical robotics. Another big asset we have in the Bay Area is our robotics and digital program, and so bringing Otava to market, which is our 4-armed robot used for soft tissue repair, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure, is a huge area which is going to get even more focus now and can then continue to build out our vision business, which is one of our smaller businesses, maybe large for other companies. It's a $6 billion business growing 6%, but that's another area we will continue to focus.
That's amazing. So we're seeing a great deal of diversification in spin-outs from companies, and as I said, I was going to ask you about this because you were a company that hadn't previously done that. What are the challenges to being a larger, diversified company carrying those multiple businesses? I mean, there was before a perceived strength in numbers, a perceived strength in covering all different markets. What is driving the broader industry move toward selling off and diversifying businesses that we're seeing across the industry?
Yeah, I think the entire industry is learning from each other. I mean, you've got to continue to reinvent. You've got to continue to optimize your portfolio to move into areas where you can address more significant unmet need and drive greater returns and impact. And so I think it's the same theme across the industry. And listen, there are challenges associated with being a large and diversified company like we are, but I'd say there's actually more opportunities. What I've learned is, number one, you've got to continue to reinvent the portfolio. And I'll tell you, we learned the hard way. If you go back to 2018 for J&J MedTech, we had 18% of our portfolio in high growth markets, so markets growing north of 5%. And there's no surprise, by the way, that at that time we grew 1.5%. Right? Over the last 5 years, we've now pushed that into about 50% of our portfolio is in high growth markets. And hence the reason we're growing mid-single digits. Our goal is to continue to push that up so we can get into those highest single-digit growth across, a multi-billion-dollar business. And so the first one, and that's both an opportunity and challenge, is portfolio management. The second one is making sure that you've got a structure that really supports and drives specialization and innovation in your business. We've also learned that you need to be really thoughtful in MedTech as to which parts of your business you standardize and you centralize. Now, of course, things like HR and finance and legal and compliance, those are no-brainers. But we've learned that anything to do with driving innovation in our businesses have got to be kept in the businesses. So for example, when we acquired Abiomed and Shockwave recently, we let them run. We bring in those things that make sense, and otherwise we really focus them on being specialized in the areas that they are. Right, and I think in MedTech, because there is such specialization across surgery and cardiovascular and vision, you've got to make sure that these businesses are organized in a way that allows them to specialize, where accountability is clear, and so they can move to drive decision-making closer to customers. I think that's the next big learning. I will say, listen, there's also a lot of benefits to scale, Tom. Right? I mean, our scale gives us the ability to. That diversification allows us to manage turns in the market, geopolitical events better than most. Right now, I'll be honest with you, China is a bit of a headwind for us. There's a lot of cost containment efforts in China. That used to be a business that drove a significant portion of our growth. We've now been able to move resources to the United States and other markets to make sure we can offset that. Smaller companies can't do that. The other one is our ability to invest in innovation. Last year alone, we spent $3.7 billion in R&D, and over the last 6 years, we've invested $30 billion in M&A. Right? Smaller companies can't do that, and so we think that benefit that comes with scale is a huge competitive advantage.
A lot to unpack there. Let's talk about the Abiomed and Shockwave acquisitions. The Abiomed acquisition predates your time at the helm of J&J MedTech. Shockwave doesn't. These two deals, as you mentioned, really give you a pole position for these two critical markets. What does it say about your broader strategy in these spaces? You covered that a little bit, but talk a little bit more. And also, I'd love to understand the approach to it, letting them sort of run on their own, because Shockwave does still feel like Shockwave when I come here and we talk to people, and we'll have Nick West here later on. And Shockwave is still, in my mind, a company. Same as Abiomed in Boston. It's still Abiomed. It's not Johnson Johnson Abiomed. It still feels like it's a medtech company in Boston. Talk a bit about those deals, what they mean for cardiac, but also that broader strategy about letting those companies be those companies.
Well, Tom, they are all Johnson & Johnson, but I'll take your comment as a real compliment, right, in how we've integrated them in a way that really preserves what makes them great, which is being incredibly customer-centric innovators in their respective areas. And to answer your question more broadly, this all ties back to portfolio management. We made a distinctive decision to say we're going to play a bigger role in the cardiovascular space. And the reason we went there is because these are the sickest patients. That is really what it's all about. These are the sickest patients. They're also patients that create the greatest burden on health systems around the world. As a result of that, if you break down the industry within medtech, it is the largest category within medtech. And by the way, in most industries, the largest category is growing the slowest. In medtech, the largest is growing the fastest because the need is greatest. This is a $60 billion category today, growing on average 8% because of that need. And so we are proud to have been involved in cardiovascular forever. We have the largest and the market-leading business within the electrophysiology space, but until recently, that was our largest and the only major asset we had in the cardiovascular space. We've now added that with Abiomed. Why did we go there? Because we wanted to build on a leadership position we had in EP and really enter the heart failure space and get closer to the interventional cardiologist. The next move with Shockwave, also a very deliberate move to broaden our impact, now getting into coronary artery disease and peripheral artery disease with Shockwave. And by the way, there's been a couple. We always talk about the big deals. There's a lot of smaller deals that we've also made to try and complement that effort. But once again, it's the area where we can make the biggest impact on patients, and certainly the greatest opportunity for us to drive returns for our shareholders.
Do you see your future M&A in that space focusing on, and if you need a glass, get a drink of water, please do, focusing on finding businesses or products that fall under those businesses that you currently have, or do you see yourself expanding even more broadly in cardiac and heart failure?
It's both. So let's look at the example. We made an acquisition of a company in the left atrial appendage space. We align that very much with our electrophysiology business. We made an acquisition in heart failure of a company called V-Wave, which has created this amazing shunt, and we'll align that with our heart failure business. And so in some cases, we'll align them where we have capabilities and where we can leverage the scale of those businesses. In other areas, we have now an opportunity to further expand in cardiovascular, and at some point may do the same.
When you're looking at M&A in this space, what is your general approach to getting to know these companies? Are you tracking them for 5 or 6 years and stopping by every year and kicking the tires? Do you generally require a strategic investment? Do you have a standard playbook that you use when identifying and becoming familiar with these potential acquisition targets?
Well, Tom, you always hear about the big ones, but the majority of our activity are much smaller deals. Right? In fact, over the last 20 years, more than 95% of the investments that J&J has made are sub $1 billion. They don't get the attention, but they often become, the major assets down the road. And to answer your question, directly, and the advice I'd offer to any innovators in the room is come and speak to us early, right? Because it's really important, especially if you're innovating in areas that are aligned to our areas of focus. We want to hear what you're doing, and we want to be a part of it. And so we may touch on this later, but we have a venture arm we call JJDC within Johnson & Johnson that makes early stage investments in in early stage companies. I'll give you an example. One of the acquisitions we made last year, about $600 million investment, that relationship started 8 years ago. And it started with a small equity investment. We get a role on the board, and we follow that company. We are able to then use J&J's resources in areas that company didn't have, like regulatory policy and reimbursement. And then as we build confidence in their ability to hit their milestones, we invest more, and eventually it could potentially result in an acquisition. And so that is a very common and a very successful business development strategy for J&J. The second part of your question is, how do we think about M&A? It's very simple. Number one, we think about scientific. So what is the significant unmet need that we are trying to address, and what technology is available that could address that? That's the first one. The second one is strategic. How does that, to your question earlier, how does it fit into the businesses we currently have? Are there capabilities that we have we could leverage to make it more successful? And then the third one is financial. Does it meet the returns of that we need to deliver to the street more broadly? It's those three lenses that we look at all potential investments.
So you mentioned JJDC. So let's go down that. I had at the bottom of my questions, but we're here. How do you view J&J's role in the broader medtech innovation landscape via JJDC? Do you see yourselves as, you always are, I think, one of the more active investors, so you don't have to see yourselves that way. You are that way. But how has the role of that venture group changed over time? Because I don't know if it's 30 years old. It's one of the more venerable venture groups out there. How is your role? How is the function of the JJDC changed over time? And you've talked a bit about the M&A strategy, the part of it, but maybe you can add on to that. And I'll tack on another question because I can't stop talking sometimes. You mentioned folks should reach out to JDC early. J&J early. Is JJDC that first call? Who is that first call that you want that people should make
it's
to
both.
let them know what you're working on?
It's a partnership, and that's the only way it works, right? And I think, given our size and our scale, and I'm not in any way trying to be arrogant, but we have the ability to leverage a balance sheet that most other medtech companies don't have. Right, and so our investments in JJDC as well as investments in M&A just allow us to do more than many other companies can do. But it is all about a partnership. JJDC doesn't make a decision that is not consistent with business strategy. We share in the risk associated with those investments, which creates some tension, appropriate and positive tension internally. But it's just another vehicle we do to get to see early stage invention or innovation, before others, right? And we're trying consistently to really make sure that we have our tentacles into all aspects of the innovation ecosystem. I'm thrilled to see that Josh Makower is going to be following me. And for those of you who don't know, you're just about to hear from one of the most prolific innovators in medtech. And Josh and his team have created an approach at Stanford Biodesign that really is a playbook for innovation in medtech. And so we're proud of the partnership we've had with Josh over many years. And that's just another example of how we really embed ourselves in the ecosystem from small startups all the way up to major strategics.
I feel like the role of the strategic investor has really evolved over time. 20 years ago, it was a Series C or D ad, someone when you were sort of farther along in your technology development. Sometimes it was money that maybe it was money of last resort, because there's always a question of whether you want a strategic investing or not, because if they don't buy you, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like today, in this innovation marketplace where capital is coming from so many different sources, strategics have really stepped in and been, I think, a stabilizing force for startups, and really have provided, I think, some obviously capital, but also just surety for startups and for the entire innovation ecosystem. Do you feel that way? Do you feel strategics are carrying more of a burden or a larger portion of the responsibility for coming up with new technologies?
Well, I think, listen, we often provide the lifeblood.
Yeah.
We are such a big part of the ecosystem, and we're proud of the progress. We think there needs to be more, right? And so no, it's a critical role, and we look forward to continuing to play it. It's a tough market out there right
Yeah.
now. I mean, many other industries have pulled a lot of capital in away from healthcare. And so I do believe that's going to change. I mean, healthcare is not going away. People continue to age, people continue to get sick, right? And we think we have tremendous opportunity to participate.
Great. I'm going to hop down a bit. We mentioned Ottava earlier. I think I'm curious as to where we are with that. Can you give us share a bit of a status of Ottava? I know you've overseen the development. You've been the head of MedTech for a relatively short time. It's been a longer term project. But what are the lessons you've been drawing from observing from afar, or I don't know how close, you might have been closer than I realized. What lessons have you learned from Ottava? Give us an update, and I'll follow up with a question. I'm sorry,
Sure.
I completely mangled that. Give us an update on Ottava.
No problem.
And then I'll slip one in.
So Ottava is our venture into four-quadrant surgical robotics, right? And what I can say and certainly while I haven't been leading it, before the last 2 years, Tom, I've certainly been part of the journey, and it is hard.
Yeah.
It is really, really hard. But I will tell you that today, J&J leads in open surgery. We lead in laparoscopic surgery. And our intent is absolutely to be a player in robotic surgery. And listen, we're not naive. We know there's a very significant incumbent in that space. But I can't speak to a surgeon or a C-suite customer who isn't demanding competition, because it makes everyone better. And given our leadership in those two categories I mentioned earlier, we have no doubt that there is a tremendous opportunity for us to participate. There's roughly 300 million procedures, surgical procedures, that happen around the world today. Less than 7% are done with any form of surgical robot. And so the opportunity for growth, and by the way, the evidence continues to build that it does a wonderful job of helping to reduce variability, which is a major opportunity for improvement within surgery. And so we are absolutely committed, and we are going to be a player. I also couldn't be more proud of the progress we've made. And to put some points on the board, we committed in 2023 that we would submit our IDE in 2024. Not only did we submit it, we got approval at the end of 24. We said we would start our clinical trial in early 25. We started that, and we are nearing completion of that trial. And we've made a commitment externally that we will submit for approval in early 2026. Mm-hmm. And so we are coming, and we're coming fast. And I think what excites us is that we believe we have something that really differentiates ourselves from, the significant competition that's out there. Number one, we have a unique architecture. If you know anything about surgical robots, a lot of them come in the forms of booms and carts, and there's a lot of capital in the OR that comes with many of those competitive systems. Ours it's all about incredible design. It is actually, the arms are embedded into the bed. So think of a typical surgical bed. You wouldn't even know that it was so robotically enabled, because the arms come out of the bed. It gives it certainly reduces the real estate challenge that many folks have in an OR. And around the world, ORs are different. Some are large, some are very small. And so this unique architecture, we think, is an absolute game changer. Mm-hmm. That's the first one. Secondly, while surgeons around the world are enjoying and appreciate the benefits that come with robotic surgery, what they miss is the best-in-class instruments that they get from J&J, and specifically our surgery business, prior known as Ethicon. I mean, these are best-in-class endocutters, energy devices, and they're not available on robots today. And so that combination of the unique architecture with best-in-class instruments, we think is going to be a delighter for our customers. And then the third one is that we are introducing an open digital architecture, right? So we're going to surround that robot, and we believe that over the long term, it isn't going to be the robot that wins in surgical robotics. It is all going to be about the data, and how you collect that data and use it to provide physicians and healthcare professionals in the OR with better insights. And we call that polyphonic.
The pressure must have been intense, though, for you. We talked about your financial might to acquire a surgical robotic company. There's a number of them out there. Some of them are farther along, some of them are commercial in the U.S. You could have just checked the box and bought a company. Somewhere along the line, the determination was made, no, this needs to be ours, this needs to be native. how much consideration was given to acquisition, and why is it so important for this to be your system, J&J system?
Yes, we have considered that pathway. Some of the capabilities we now have on our Ottava system were acquired, right? But we felt that in order to really be long-term leaders in this space, we needed to build and earn the institutional knowledge to really, that's what's made us win in open surgery. That's why we've won in laparoscopic surgery, and we think that's going to be really important for the long term. And so that's been a big part of it. And frankly, we haven't seen, outside of the current incumbent, we haven't seen systems out there that we think are even close to differentiating what we're going to bring to market with Ottava.
And you did make an acquisition. You got Monarch through a large acquisition. Where do you see that fitting into the surgery market? And can you speak to the growth you're seeing there and the future potential?
Tom, our plan is to win across robotics. And so I didn't mention this, but I should have earlier. We made an acquisition, an investment in a company out in China, right? Where we're looking at another form of more of a cart-based approach to surgical robotics, right? That in no way suggests that we're not committed to Ottava. It actually is a further doubling down on our commitment to win in surgical robotics in all markets. And so we've done that. I think on Monarch, as you just mentioned, this is an incredible technology. And let me start with the unmet need. And it's probably an amazing example of where, we're putting the tech back in medical device. Lung cancer is an absolute killer, even more so outside of the US than it is here. Right? And what really matters in lung cancer is for patients to be diagnosed as quickly as possible, because the mortality and the survival benefit of being diagnosed earlier they're just game changing. And so what this technology allows us to do is allows us to go through the throat with a bronchoscope and actually think about a physician actually driving a joystick, navigating the bronchoscope down into the confines and the branches of the lung where most devices can never get to actually biopsy and determine, what the course or the path of treatment should be for that patient. It's an absolute game changer. And we've now layered on with that with 510(k) approval early this year of a capability called Quest, which actually brings more AI-enabled navigation and imaging to the procedure to ensure that the biopsies are even more precise. We are also now building on that. This is also, the Monarch platform is the only device that is also approved for use within urology, and we're going after kidney stones. And so that will be the next area of innovation. I can't mention a date yet, but we're working hard on bringing Monarch to really solve also a significant unneed in the urology space with kidney stones.
That's great. You mentioned Renovo. How should we view that investment? Is that an opportunity? Does that give you an opportunity to look inside and understand the company? Is it deeper than that? Do you already know the company and you know how this is going to end up? How should we look at that investment?
Yeah, we're learning, Tom. And we are today, and part of, I think, back to your question about globalization, we've been in China for more than 30 years. We are, by itself, the largest medtech company in that market. And it's an important market for us. We've invested in it for a long time. We have a huge commitment to patients and customers there. We believe that the investment we've made in Renovo gives us an opportunity to learn and also bring to market a technology that is desirable and one where that market is just highly competitive. And so this is our pathway to get there faster and to participate in one of the most exciting spaces within medtech in China.
That's great. And the final business I want to focus on is vision. You recently launched AccuView Oasis Max. It's a multifocal lens for astigmatism. You've got your Technis Odyssey intraocular lens for cataracts. Where do you see the opportunity there?
Yeah, and thank you for bringing it up. Often we talk about cardiovascular and surgery because they're bigger spaces and bigger businesses, but we couldn't be more proud of the impact we make on patients around the world. Upwards of 40 million patients every year benefit from the capabilities we have in the material and optical science space, which is what vision's all about. Today we are worldwide market leaders in contact lenses, and if you're wearers of contact lenses, you'll know that the science and the innovation in that space has been unbelievable, from permanent devices to daily disposables, which are really helping patients achieve better eyesight with the comfort and the convenience that goes along with the daily disposable. And we just actually launched a product called AccuView Oasis Max, multifocal for astigmatism. And what it is the first and the only available daily disposable lens that helps patients suffering with both presbyopia and astigmatism. Most of these patients didn't think that contact lenses were an option for them, and now they are. That is a huge business for us. And then finally, intraocular lenses. When you look at how science is now changing, frankly, the life of people who typically just saw losing your sight as part of getting old, it is unbelievable. And what typically happens for people as they age is your lens becomes hard, and as a result of that, it changes your long and short-term vision. What we're able to now do through a very simple surgical procedure is actually peel away the eye, take the original lens and replace it with a synthetic lens. It's called an intraocular lens. This is changing the dynamic. It typically started for people facing cataracts. It's now more being utilized by any person who's aging and wants a really convenient opportunity and means of improving their eyesight. We have a full portfolio by the name of Technis, both Odyssey and PureSee. We've implanted those in almost 300,000 eyes over the last couple of years, and that's a business that's growing for us almost 15%. And so couldn't be more proud of the impact we're making in that particular area as well.
It's an exciting space. Final question. You touched upon this at the start. You're a world traveler. You're engaging with medtech folks across the world. I think we're all becoming aware that the medtech industry needs to be heard and needs to be seen. What are you drawing from these global experiences and experiences in the U.S. in terms of where medtech is headed? And what, if you're talking to a young person looking to start in an industry and medtech is on their list, what's your story to them? What's your selling point to them? Why should they be involved in this community?
Well, I'll end where I started, Tom, and it's just an incredible opportunity to learn, grow, and give back, in an industry that is changing the lives and saving lives of people each and every day. That's what it is all about, right? And I think about how technology and how we enable the use of technology from AI, data, 5G, robotics. I mean, how we now apply that to medical technology it's opening up an entire new tech era for medical device. And I use the example I often cite, but I'll say it again, is, you think about what we're able to do today in medtech compared to what we could do 20 years ago. It has been absolutely revolutionary, right? One of the companies we recently acquired called Abiomed, what they've been able to do is to invent a miniature, and I mean miniature pump, that can be inserted through the groin or through the neck. It's fed into a vein, it's guided up to the heart. And when a patient, or after a patient has faced acute heart attack or cardiogenic shock, this pump allows the heart to recover. The heart is like a muscle, and this pump is inserted into the heart and allows the heart to recover, either so that the functioning of the heart can be restored naturally or as a bridge to transplantation. You know that 50% of people who are coming to an ER every day with a heart attack, 50% do not make it.
Wow.
And we now have data to show that this device actually improves survivability. We have clinical data to show that for a patient who receives this device versus the current standard of care, they can count on average 600 extra days of life over a 10-year period on the back of being given that intervention. I mean, how special is that?
And I'm glad you highlight Abiomed, because it's a 30-year-old company. It's a long story, and it's gone through many iterations, and it's involved people of different types who've said yes to different challenges and taken them on. I mean, I think in some ways it's the perfect medtech story. We don't have these companies that are just founded and create a product and find success. It's digging and digging and...
And Tom, they persevered for 30 years.
They did.
But what enabled the innovation that they have are capabilities that just they didn't exist 30 years ago. So the precision engineering to be able to manufacture a device of this nature, right? The ability to have connectivity so a physician can see how the device is operating while in the heart, that wasn't available. And so, I mean, this is really what MedTech is all about, right? And I would just say, think about yourself as a patient. Think about the family members of those people. I mean, that's why we do what we do.
Well said. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Well, that is a wrap. Thanks so much for joining us in this episode of the DeviceTalks Weekly Podcast. Thanks again to Vantedge Medical for sponsoring this episode, and to Tim Schmid and Josh Makower for really giving us a super strong opening to DeviceTalks West, and for allowing us to share those conversations here on DeviceTalks Weekly. I hope you'll join Vantedge Medical and Kayleen Brown on December 9th at DeviceTalks Tuesdays. Go to DeviceTalks.com to register. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, make sure you subscribe to our DeviceTalks Podcast Network. You can see all of our available podcasts at DeviceTalks.com. You can also listen to them there or on YouTube. We are everywhere, but if you want to subscribe, go on your favorite podcast player. You can subscribe to the DeviceTalks Podcast Network or choose one of your favorite podcasts. You can subscribe just to that one, but they're all so darn good. Why limit yourself? That is a wrap, folks. Thanks for listening again to, please do connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Tom Salemi, Editorial Director of DeviceTalks. Connect with Managing Editor Kayleen Brown on LinkedIn, and of course, Chris Newmarker, Executive Editor of Mass Device. Also, make sure you follow Mass Device and DeviceTalks on LinkedIn as well. We send out lots of great news and insights and offers throughout the year, and we'd love you to be part of our future conversations. All right, that's all my business. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the DeviceTalks Weekly Podcast. We will have an episode next week for Thanksgiving. I'll try to get it out on Wednesday, but it may come out on Friday. But definitely want to keep sending some great MedTech information your way. So once again, make sure you do subscribe. Take care, everybody.